Hello everyone and welcome to the Bird International L&E Club. In this podcast series, we will hear from our international team of employment law experts on a variety of cutting-edge topics. Each episode will provide 5 key takeaways on a key L&E theme with a US focus in 10 minutes. I'm Patty Walsh, a US-based partner within the L&E group here at Bird, and I co-head our San Francisco office. Hello everyone and welcome to our International L&E Club podcasts. 5 key takeaways in 10 minutes. And today it's my absolute pleasure to have with me my very good friend and London partner, Emily Clark. And she is going to answer the very simple question, which is, how is legal tech relevant to a busy in-house L&E lawyer? Simple question. Over to you now, Emily.
Hi, Fatty. Thank you. I'll just start by saying I was at an event a little while back and an in-house lawyer described her inbox as being like a fire hose spraying requests at her faster than she could ever respond to. It was quite an image. And at the same time, we all know that budgets are being squeezed and lawyers have got this perennial challenge of having to do more with less. So I think legal tech is relevant. I think it's the key to potentially unlocking some value in this situation. There's certainly been a lot of talk about legal tech revolutionizing the profession, and there are some really exciting developments. But I also think it's fair to say that adoption perhaps not as widespread as one might have expected a few years ago. And there are certainly challenges in issues like data security, privacy, IP are all so important that these tools need to be considered really carefully. But I do think there's also a practical barrier, and it takes time to develop a legal tech solution that's fit for purpose and does what it's intended to. And it's tough for a busy lawyer, particularly when most employment issues are so time sensitive, to invest that time. So what I thought I'd do is to spend the next few minutes sharing a handful of real life examples our international employment group are working on and where we've seen legal tech have a real, very tangible, positive impact in the employment space. And I'll also share a few thoughts along the way of where I think this goes next. So the first example that I wanted to share is project management software. This is where my interest in legal tech really began. And the picture, which I'm sure will be familiar to many in-house counsel, particularly where they're managing multi-jurisdiction projects, is you get large volumes of documents, issues with version control. There's an imperative to identify and keep tracking risk that's flagged during the project and record that somewhere. Complex timelines, dependencies, sometimes timings get pushed out if milestones or deliverables move. You've got multiple stakeholders across different organizations, time zones, budgets that need to be carefully managed. It's a lot going on at once. And we've all got very used to working with email, but it's simply not geared up for working collaboratively on these kind of complex projects. There are other collaboration tools with co-authoring capabilities, for example, but I think in practice, the reality is that permissions, so really carefully curating who can see what, are quite difficult to manage across multiple organizations and projects like these kind of cross-border restructurings, which could be extremely sensitive. And this is why we like using project tools, like we've got our own Two Birds Access platform, which is based on HiQ. And it's effectively a platform which can be configured as is needed for a project, kind of a blank page, as it were, but lots of functionality, which includes things like heat maps and graphs and charts to share data. There are options for document automation and workflow management, assigning tasks, which can sync up with email. Lots that's available. These sorts of tools, and we sometimes combine a couple of different project tools at once on projects, but they allow users, whether it's our client or our colleagues across our offices or third-party counsel, to have access to the project 24/7. They've got ISO security certificates and permissions can be very tightly managed. And I think that's a really key point, particularly for these kind of sensitive projects. And the other point I'd just add here is that these tools, sadly, so far as I'm aware, they don't run the project for you. So we almost always use them with the support of our specialist legal project delivery team. And they are the experts at kind of helping us design and get the right setup for projects and then maintain the tools once they're in place so that they're up to date and we have that single source of truth that everyone trusts while they're working on the project. And then there are all sorts of benefits that come from having created these sorts of platforms, like archiving information, which can then be used for project wash-ups and templates for future projects. could go on and on. But I'll move on to the second example that I'll share, which is document automation software. I think of this in kind of two buckets, as it were. The first is being able to generate potentially very large numbers of documents based on a template and data set, literally at the click of a button. And examples where I've seen this is where a company might be issuing new contracts or letters or settlement agreements to very large populations all at once. It's kind of like a turbocharged mail merge, but it does allow much more complex agreements to be generated. So you might have different clause options depending on particular circumstances and that underlying data. And it plans that all through and can spit out a set of documents which works for what you need. It does mean there's some upfront work to get that template designed and nailed down and the data set, which shouldn't be underestimated. But having put in that hard work up front, you then get the benefit of minimizing slow data entry and obvious risk of human error, and then the time proofreading. Downloading and distributing documents for e-signature can be sped up with this kind of software. And I've also had a situation not long ago where at the last minute, realised that an amendment would need to be made to all of the documents. And where in the old days we would have had to have gone through painstakingly one by one, in this case it was literally fix the underlying data set, click go, and it's there, done at a click of a button. The other category bucket that we've seen some really good results for clients is working with them to automate templates. So there's effectively a kind of document sat there with a form intake for completing that document, and there can be supplementary guidance notes to help the person completing the form, which answers and how they should work it through. And effectively they answer the questions and then it spits out a document, and that's brilliant for self-service, for things like employment contracts, quite complex documents, but driving the kind of consistency and accuracy best practice that we all want to see. And there are also some really exciting developments in document automation space, as well as in terms of chatbots for intake of information and AI to collate the documents themselves. So this is a sort of area where I think we could see some quite significant leaps in progress in the near future. The next example I'll share is our litigation tracker. So we've got a tracker which we've developed on our Fibonacci project management software. We've built a bespoke tool which allows us effectively to manage and report on employment claims. We've particularly developed this in the UK at the moment, where at the click of a button, it pre-populates a framework within a folder, setting out all the stages of a case and allowing you to complete it as you go along, and you can track progress of the case, deadlines, jointly draft and save documents, as well as sharing access with client and other parties that might be working on the case. But it's interesting, the bit that our clients unsurprisingly find most exciting actually is the ability, not so much in the kind of the intricate details that might be saved in the platform, but actually it's the overview and the ability to have a kind of real-time overview of active cases, particularly valuable if you've got multiple cases going on at once. So you can instantly see what's the current status of live cases. And then in terms of closed cases, we can build a fantastic data set, which in my experience is not so often tracked or not easy to collate if it hasn't been tracked, of things like the type of claim that was being brought, what kind of subjects it covered, and what parts of the business they're coming from or countries, whether it's settled, at what stage, for how much. All that sort of information can be stored and then considered later. And that all helps drive greater understanding for the business, improved ability to allocate budgets, strategic tactical insights, and then opportunities for trend spotting and preventative measures like training or other interventions. The next one is translation software. Anyone responsible for multiple countries will know that translation of legal documents like employment contracts can be a real pain point. It's often a tough balance between lawyers translating documents sentence by sentence, which is obviously time consuming and therefore costly, or on the other hand, a less accurate option of relying on kind of generic online translation tools or even third-party translators. And I must say, I regularly get feedback from our international colleagues that the quality of the output from generic translations of legal documents isn't good, where things like terminology and phrasing can be so essential in determining legal meaning and entitlements. And so they still then need to spend significant time painstakingly correcting and updating those translations. So this is where we've seen some translation tools powered by AI, which are used by our team in a real game changer. They meet all the security requirements, and the accuracy of the legal translation in some cases is 5 or 6 times better than generic translation tools. And our team say it takes just a fraction of the time as a result to finalise the documents. And it can work with the formatting and clause numbering, directly replacing the text within a document. But I think the bit which I think is so clever, as the AI bit, is that it learns as it's being used. So our employment teams have their own account, which means that we're constantly, as a team, training the tool on the best legal terminology and phrasing for labour and employment. And then not only does it remember that correction within the document, flowing down the change to other clauses, so it's consistent, but it remembers it for the next employment user. So that means the tool is continuously improving, and we're all benefiting from that increased accuracy and consistency and the time and cost saving that all of that brings. And then the last one, sort of more on the roadmap, is briefly mention about using large language models like ChatGPT. There's obviously been a huge amount of hype, and for good reason, because they are incredibly clever. And we've also heard of some disaster stories of lawyers using them and littering pleadings with fake cases and other sort of issues where they obviously come with a health warning in terms of how they're used in a legal setting. But the combination of the power of these systems plus the human intelligence in how they're applied is no doubt incredibly exciting. And we've got a private instance of one of these tools to see how we can make use of it as a firm for things like drafting documents or collating multi-jurisdiction advice. And that essentially gives us as lawyers a safe experimentation place, and we can use it to foster and try out ideas and use cases. And we've got a few in progress already and lots of exciting work underway. And we hope to have more to share on those soon. So in conclusion, I guess my view is there is no panacea. Legal tech is a fast-moving toolbox, and of course the right tool needs to be picked for the job. Inevitably, some time needs to be invested to shape it to meet your needs. And in the case of the project management software, I really do think having project managers by your side to operate these tools is key. I guess the bottom line is that these tools do allow lawyers and their clients and in-house labour and employment lawyers to achieve more in their day. And I'll just finish by saying that I absolutely love this subject, if it hasn't come across already. So if anyone is listening and they want to discuss it more, I would love to talk to you. So please do just get in touch. And thanks for having me.
Thank you so much indeed, Emily. And I can vouch, Emily really does love this stuff. And what's been fantastic today is that we've gone from theory, which we hear a lot about, to real life examples. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We hope you join us again and look out for more content coming soon.